Alright, time to get rid of this logo. That's better. Wait. Hang on. There we go. Yo! So, a while ago I had to do this commercial where I had to remove all the logos from their clothing, which was a pain in the... So I thought I'd just do a tutorial on it just to show you how I went about it. So for this footage, I just went out and filmed my mate. His name's Brad Cruz. Tom Pitt. He's actually a professional actor. Not! You can see that the logo is nice and clean on his shirt. So we can mask the logo really nice, but you can see how the detail on his jumper sort of bends and crinkles. So we can't just use a simple method to get rid of it. So what you want to do is, in After Effects, you want to bring in your footage as an image sequence, and then make sure you click on the image sequence, and then just go up to animation, and then track in Mocha. The first settings that come up with is usually pretty good, so just leave that how it is. Click OK. And now it'll bring your footage into Mocha. Now we want to track the logo, so we can create a shape over this logo and that will track each frame. We can start from the start, but what it'll do, you'll notice as, over time, the logo transforms. So the best thing to do in a situation like this is start somewhere from around the middle and then track back and then track forwards. We'll just straighten up the logo a bit more, so maybe about here, and zoom in a little bit. And now what we'll do is we'll go to this pen tool, we'll click on that, and we'll just do a really rough, just click a shape out, and if you right click, it'll just end the shape. And now it's as simple as that. So it's created a keyframe down here for us. Most of these track settings should just remain the same. They work pretty well. But for this example, I'm just going to tick perspective as well, so we get a better track. Now we can just track forward. And so now it's tracked the shape from the middle all the way to the end. So now we'll go back to the middle and we'll just track backwards. And there we go. So now we've got our logo tracked, and it's looks pretty clean to me. So now what we have to do is we have to tell Mocha which angle this logo is facing. So if we click this little grid up here, we can see that it adds a grid just over the initial shape. So it's estimating what it thinks that the angle is. And you can see it actually looks pretty good, so we don't have to do that much work to it. But if we zoom in, the way to change this grid is actually click on here. What's this called? Show planar surface. So click on there, and this will actually bring up your anchor points. So see there's 4 little things there? That will determine what angle our face is. So we can just pretty much line this up with sort of our text. And now that looks pretty good to me. So now play our footage. You can see that the logo, you can see that the grid lines up with the logo really well. Now that we've tracked our logo, the first thing we want to do is we want to export our mask. This simple little one we've got here, we can just keep it like that for now if you want. Down here, just click on Export Shape Data, and then just copy that to clipboard. And if you go back into After Effects, if you just click on your layer and just Control V for paste, what that's going to do is it's going to paste in a effect which is up here, which is actually a Mocha mask. And I find it's actually easier to use the mask as an After Effects mask. So we just undo that. So click on the footage and go up to Edit and then do Paste Mocha Mask. And now what that does is it'll just treat the mask like a normal After Effects mask. So now if we go through the footage, you can see that it's masked out really nicely. So we'll just change it from Add to Subtract. We'll give it a little bit of a feather. Like 4 pixels, and now we've got our logo masked out really nicely. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to import the transform data, so the actual tracking data itself. So we'll just go down here to Export Tracking Data, and you've got these different ones to choose from, but for this example we're going to use transform data. So just make sure that one's selected, and do Copy to Clipboard. Go back into After Effects. We want to put this transform data onto something. So the easiest way to do that is to just right click and go New Null. We'll just add a null, and we'll just extend that out to the range of the composition. Make sure we're back on 0, start of the composition, and just click Control V on our null. And now that's going to paste our transform data onto the null. Expand this, you can see all the keyframes are now pasted onto the null. One thing you'll notice is that anchor point actually has keys, and that's actually bad. We don't want that because it's going to be counterproductive for our position. It's not going to end up being in the spot we want it. So if we just click anywhere, so we deselect everything, and then this little clock next to it, if we just click that, it's going to disable all the keys for that layer. So now we've got rid of all those keys. And if we just scrub forward, you can see that this null is actually transforming the way we want it. Now we can just call this null something like, we can just call that tracking data. And now we just need to fill in the information inside here to make it look like his shirt with no logo. So if we just fire up the old photo banger shop. So we go to the first frame that we want to edit and just drag that into Photoshop. We'll just zoom in here. Over here on the layers, we can just duplicate this layer. We'll draw a really rough mask over the logo, and then we're just going to push delete. And now what that's going to do is it's going to delete. It's only going to delete on the top layer. So we've got the original layer underneath. We're just going to hide that layer, and now with that still selected, we'll just duplicate this background layer again. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go up to edit, and we're going to do fill, and now we're just going to choose content aware. Now we can deselect, so we can see, if we zoom out a bit, you can see that the lines of the crinkle in the jumper doesn't match up with what the content aware has done. So we've got a good base to start with, but we can't just rely solely on the computer to fill in these details for us. This is going to be the most difficult part because we have to actually paint in the detail that will match. Just create a new layer so it's underneath the background with the hole. You can enable this now if you want, because that won't matter. And now on this layer, we'll pick our paintbrush and just give it a soft edge. Maybe just reduce the opacity a bit more. Maybe down 30%. We can control that with our pen pressure anyway. So where we want to paint down, so just at the border, we'll just hold down Alt, and this will let us select this color right on the border. And now we can just paint that. We can just simply start painting down, and we'll do that over here as well. And you can see we're starting to paint this sort of color. We're bringing the color back into our into the chest area where the logo was. And what we can do is we can even just reduce the brush a little bit so we can get more detail in there. So you can see now I'm sort of we're going to have to make up the information. So you can see here, so you've got like this little part here sort of goes all the way down to match. So we want to just sort of mimic that. So we'll paint up past this thing because that's what the content aware did for us, and we don't want to keep that big. So we want to keep it sort of coming down to match up with this jumper. Sorry, with this crease. Alright, so pretty happy with this, except this little lump here that the content aware. Oh, come on, you two dogs! I'm trying to like talk to the computer here. So you see this little lump here that looks a bit odd. So if we zoom out, you can see it. It's more apparent. So just sort of just try and get rid of that a bit more. You just basically keep selecting the colours around the edges and just sort of fade them in as you go. And eventually you'll blend it all together to make it look nice. Alright, so that's looking good as a quick first pass. So you'll notice that in the chest area it's very smooth because we just painted it in, as opposed to all the surrounding noise and grain that we've got. Don't have to worry about that for now, we'll fix that later. So just keep it like rough and smooth like this. It just has to look good enough, basically. So now that I've painted this detail in, I'm just going to save this image out, create a new folder, and we'll just call these clean, and we'll just keep the naming the same. Change it to a PNG, and just make sure you put clean in there so we can differentiate it. Click save. Alright, so now back in After Effects, we'll get up that clean image we just made, and we'll just drag that into our project. And now what we'll do is oh, I just realised I named that wrong. Alright, it's renamed now. I cleaned it up. Alright, so now we'll just drag this into our comp, but we'll put it underneath our mask layer. So now it's going to show up underneath it. See, we'll just extend that still image to last for our composition. And now if I play now, you can see that it doesn't do anything because the image is just in one place. So now we'll go to this parent selection over here, and we'll just select the tracking data as the parent. So now this layer is now linked to the tracking data, so it's going to move with this layer. So now if I play through, you can see now it moves with the footage. So if I zoom out and I hide the layer above it, you can see that now that's the movement the image is doing behind the footage. So it's acting like it's linked to the chest. So you can sort of get away with this as a quick effect, just one image. But you notice that there's, the lighting changes fairly quickly. So in about a couple of frames, you can see now the lighting has changed quite dramatically. So one way we could do that is we could chuck an effect on, and we could just we can just lighten the layer, and then when we get to down here, we can darken the layer. It's not going to be perfect, so this just isn't getting darkened around this area. It's actually, it's changing its light, so we're going to have to try and match it up. It's just going to be a nightmare. And also the second problem is that you notice, especially here, the jumper has these crinkles. So we actually need to change the crinkle pattern. We can't just keep the same one throughout the whole thing. So what we'll do now, we want to pick a dramatic change in the pattern. So it looks okay now. You can see the lighting's changed, but maybe see now you can see this little crinkle here starts to happen, and this one here starts to happen. So we can paint a new image based on this new crinkle pattern that we see. So we can just have a look now and sort of say where does this crinkle start to happen? Maybe about here. So what's that, frame 17? So we'll go back into Photoshop again, and now what we'll do is we'll go back to our image sequence, and we'll grab frame 17, drag that into Photoshop, and now we'll just do exactly the same thing we did before. So just duplicate, okay, make sure you create a nice little mask around here. Just delete, duplicate it again, Shift F5, press enter for content aware, and now we'll create a new layer to paint on, and deselect this, and now we can paint in our new detail. Alright, so it's not like, it's not perfect, but it doesn't really matter at this stage. It's for the amount of time we're going to see this image on screen, it doesn't matter that much. So now I'm just going to save this out again. Put it into our clean frames. And we'll just remember to make this frame 17. Save. And now back in After Effects, we'll just grab our frame 17, we'll drag that in, and we'll do the same thing we did before. So we'll put this in underneath our masked frame, but above our first clean frame, and we'll just extend this to the comp width again. And now we'll link this to the tracking data. So now if we go back, you can see that it's doing the same thing as our first clean frame did, but it's just a different crinkle pattern. So what we'll do is we want to sort of blend between these crinkle patterns. So we'll go to frame 17 where it was, and we'll set the opacity to be 100%, and then as we scroll back, what we'll do is we'll fade it out. So we'll fade it to like 0%. So now it's going to fade from the first clean plate to the second clean plate. So now as we play, you can see how it looks like the crinkles are moving as well. It's crinkling with the jumper pattern. All we have to do is go through this whole walk footage and just sort of come up with key moments where you can see the pattern crinkling more. So from frame 17, we'll go forward a little bit more and we'll see now maybe at about frame 31, you can see that now it looks like the crinkle pattern has changed again. And we'll just paint in all the spots we think need a good frame. Alright, so I've just gone through and I've made more clean plates. So you can see here, I've just gone here, I've got 10. So if I scroll through now, you can see I've just gone through where I thought it needed some clean plates, and I've just painted in some clean things. I've put them in the layer like I did before. So if I just quickly expand these layers, you can see that I've keyed in the transparency so that it blends in the footage where it needs to blend. So if I play it back, you can see now it looks like, it's not perfect, but it's getting there. It's pretty good. It's up to you how many clean plates you want to do, but one thing you got to be aware of is the more images you paint in, the more inconsistencies you're going to have, because you're not going to be able to paint the same detail every frame. So you don't want to paint too many, but you want to make sure you paint enough, if that makes sense. So, and one thing you'll notice is at the end here, I put two really close to each other, because you see that little shadow that passes over the body? As the shadow's about to hit, I keyed the opacity, and as the shadow comes over, I keyed the opacity to 100%. So as it faded from bright light to shadow light, it created the effect for me. So if I turn off my masked footage, you'll now see the all the images blending together to sort of make that sort of blending clean plate, I guess you'd call it, underneath. Alright, so now that we've got all our clean plates we want to use, you notice now how you can see that it really stands out, that quick change of lighting. You can start to make out the square. But I don't want to go in and paint another one, because I might paint it a little bit too inconsistent, and this crease it works for me at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an effect on this layer. So on the first layer, I'll create an effect in here. Let's go color correction, hue and saturation. Now you can see if we adjust this lightness, we can just bump it up slightly, and you can see now it matches more to this frame. We can just key this, and then if we come back, we can set this back to 0, and now it'll key the brightness. Maybe you want this to be a little more bright, so maybe key that to 1, and now you can see that it blends in a lot more than it did before. Remember how I said that it doesn't matter that you can paint it smooth, because we're going to match the grain later. So now what we'll do is we just want to create this grainy effect on top of the clean plates. So we'll add another effect here, and we'll go down to noise and grain, and we'll just click match grain. And now we'll turn on final output just so we can see it better. And now you can see it's added this grain effect to the clean plate. So what we can do is, just to make sure that it's getting the right noise profile, we can just click noise source layer and we can click the main footage that we've got. So now it's going to match it pretty closely, but you can see if we start to play through now, it'll be a bit slower, but it might start to get a bit more of a fuzzy effect, and it'll make out the square a lot more. So we don't want it to be this much. So what we'll do is we'll just go into here and we'll bring the intensity down a bit to maybe say 12.5 first, and now you can see it's not as intense. Maybe we can even go back into our main footage and we can even feather this mask just a little bit more, so maybe 6. See what that does. And you just want to be careful, because the more you feather it, the more you'll start to introduce the logo, and we don't want to introduce the logo. So alright, so now what we can do now, once we're happy with that grain effect, we can just copy that, so Control C, and then we can go to all our other clean layers and just click on the effects layer and go paste. And now that same grain effect is going to be put onto each clean plate. And so now once you've done that, you can even go in, and have a bit of fun. So you can, chuck some text maybe on his jumper. Look at Moy. Rotate it to match. Give it another mode, maybe soft light or something like that. And then you can just simply attach that to the tracking data. Oh, the dog won't shut up. So now he's got his little new custom logo. And there you have it. Easy peasy, Japanesey. Yeah, I hope that helped.